The Galactic Innovation Summit's main hangar was a cathedral of technology, its crystalline dome stretching hundreds of meters overhead, refracting the light of 3 distant suns. Admiral Vextral of the Centaurian Empire stood motionless, all 4 of his primary eyes fixed on the object that had thrown the entire summit into chaos, a human vessel. "Impossible," he whispered, his translator converting the complex harmonics of his native tongue into standard galactic speech. "Simply impossible." The ship before him defied conventional spacefaring logic. Where other vessels in the hangar proudly displayed their quantum drives and antimatter engines, this human craft seemed almost primitive. Its hull was smooth, almost organic in appearance, with no visible propulsion systems or weapon ports. It was smaller than most diplomatic shuttles, yet it had somehow traversed half the galaxy to reach the summit. First Officer Nyara Kval approached her superior, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in concern. "Admiral, the other delegations are demanding answers. The Arcturus Confederation is threatening to withdraw from the summit entirely." Vextral's secondary eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of contemplation among his species. "Let them bluster. There's something here we're missing, something important." He turned to face the human delegation's representative, who stood quietly near their vessel. Commander James Blackwood remained perfectly composed despite being surrounded by some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the silver white of his uniform, and his posture spoke of absolute confidence rather than the deference most humans showed in these gatherings. "Commander Blackwood," Vextral's translator harmonized, "your arrival has caused quite a stir. The summit's protocols clearly state that all participating vessels must meet minimum technological standards. Yet your ship appears to lack even basic FTL capabilities." Blackwood's lips curved slightly. "Admiral, with respect, appearances can be deceiving. The Horizon Breaker meets all summit requirements, though perhaps not in ways you're familiar with." A ripple of murmur spread through the gathering crowd of delegates. The Arcturus representative, a towering crystalline being named Zwaxlith, stepped forward. "This is an outrage. Humans were barely achieving orbital flight a century ago. Now they dare to mock this august gathering with this primitive construct." Blackwood's expression didn't change, but his eyes sparkled with something that made Vextral's defensive instincts tingle. "If I may, Admiral, we came to demonstrate something rather than simply tell you about it. Would you care for a tour of our primitive vessel?" Before Vextral could respond, the ship's hull shifted. The smooth surface rippled like liquid metal, and an entrance appeared where moments before there had been only seamless continuity. The gathered delegates stepped back involuntarily, even the usually unflappable Zwaxlith showing signs of distress in their crystalline matrix. "Metamorphic smart matter," Nyara breathed, her bioluminescence flaring in excitement. "But that's theoretical technology. Even our best scientists haven't achieved stable configurations lasting more than a few seconds." Blackwood finished for her. "Yes, we encountered that problem too. The solution was surprisingly simple once we stopped trying to control the atomic restructuring and started guiding it instead." Vextral felt his worldview shifting. The Centaurian Empire prided itself on being at the forefront of technological advancement. Their quantum drives were the fastest in known space, their energy weapons the most powerful. Yet here stood a vessel that challenged everything they thought they knew about materials science and engineering. "Please, Admiral," Blackwood gestured toward the opening, "allow me to show you how humanity approaches space travel. I think you'll find our methods unconventional." As Vextral followed Blackwood into the vessel, he noticed something that sent a shiver through his exoskeletal frame. The interior wasn't just adapting to their presence, it was anticipating their needs. The corridor widened slightly to accommodate his larger form, and the atmospheric composition shifted to a mix more comfortable for Centaurian physiology. "Your ship," he said carefully, "it's alive." Blackwood's smile widened slightly. "Not exactly. Though I suppose that depends on how you define life." We prefer to think of it as aware. The boundary between organic and mechanical thinking is rather blurry in human engineering. They entered what appeared to be the bridge, though it bore little resemblance to any command center Vextral had ever seen. There were no visible controls, no screens, no command chairs. Instead, the walls pulsed with patterns that seemed to follow some complex rhythm, and the floor itself appeared to be conducting some sort of ongoing calculation, mathematical symbols flowing like water beneath their feet. "This is impossible," Nyara whispered, her scientific training warring with what her senses were telling her. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical using conventional power sources, Blackwood agreed. "Fortunately, we don't use conventional power sources. Humanity learned early on that trying to brute force our way through space travel's challenges wasn't going to work. We had to think differently." Vextral watched as Blackwood placed his hand against one of the walls. The patterns shifted, forming what appeared to be a star map of the local cluster. But it was unlike any star map he'd ever seen. It showed connections and relationships between stellar bodies that shouldn't have been possible to detect. "You see, Admiral," Blackwood continued, "while the rest of the galaxy was perfecting faster-than-light travel, humanity was asking a different question entirely: why travel faster than light when you can simply reduce the distance needed to travel?" The implications hit Vextral like a gravitational wave. "You're manipulating space itself. In a manner of speaking. Though again, manipulation might not be the right word. We found that space-time is rather cooperative if you ask nicely." A sudden commotion from outside interrupted their conversation. Nyara's patterns flashed urgent red. "Admiral, the Arcturus delegation is powering up their weapons. They're claiming the human vessel represents a security threat to the summit." Blackwood's expression remained calm, but something hardened in his eyes. "Well," he said quietly, "it seems we'll be demonstrating the Horizon Breaker's capabilities sooner than planned. Admiral, I suggest you hold on to something. Things are about to get rather interesting." As alarms began blaring throughout the summit station, Vextral realized that humanity hadn't come to the summit to join the existing galactic order. They had come to revolutionize it. And watching Blackwood's confident movements as the crisis unfolded, he suspected this was exactly the scenario the humans had been preparing for. The game was about to change, and Vextral wasn't entirely sure if the galaxy was ready for what humanity had in store. The Horizon Breaker's interior shifted from serene calculation to focused action in an instant. The flowing mathematical patterns beneath their feet accelerated, and the walls pulsed with a deeper, more urgent rhythm. Admiral Vextral watched in fascination as Commander Blackwood simply stood in the center of the bridge, eyes closed, hands relaxed at his sides. "Arcturus vessels charging main weapons," Nyara reported, her bioluminescent patterns strobing with anxiety. "They're deploying in attack formation." "Fascinating," Blackwood murmured, eyes still closed. "They actually believe their weapons could harm us. Admiral, you might want to observe this closely. It's not often one gets to witness the fundamental laws of physics being politely asked to take a coffee break." The ship's interior suddenly became transparent, giving them a perfect view of the gathering Arcturus fleet. 5 crystalline vessels, each bristling with quantum cannons and particle accelerators, had taken up aggressive positions around the summit station. Their weapons charged with familiar blue-white energy, preparing to fire. "Commander," Vextral's translator struggled to convey his urgent tone, "those are Class 9 quantum weapons. They can shatter small moons. Your vessel's mass is insufficient to generate shields capable of." "Admiral," Blackwood interrupted gently, opening his eyes, "you're thinking in linear terms. Humanity abandoned that limitation long ago. Watch." The first Arcturus vessel fired. A lance of pure quantum energy, capable of reducing most ships to their component atoms, streaked toward the Horizon Breaker. Vextral's defensive instincts screamed at him to take cover, but something in Blackwood's calm demeanor held him in place. The quantum beam reached the human vessel's outer hull, and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply, ceased to exist. Impossible, Nyara whispered, her scientific mind racing to process what she'd just witnessed. Energy cannot be destroyed. It has to go somewhere. Blackwood smiled. Oh, it went somewhere. Specifically, about 3 meters to the left and 2 weeks from now. We found that temporal displacement is much more energy efficient than traditional shields. He paused thoughtfully. Though I suppose the maintenance crew at the station might be a bit confused when a quantum beam apparently appears out of nowhere during next week's routine inspection. The Arcturus ships fired again, this time in coordinated volleys. Each blast disappeared upon reaching the horizon breaker, vanishing into what Vextral now realized must be localized temporal anomalies. The human vessel stood unmoved, its smooth hull not even showing a mark. This is hardly productive, Blackwood sighed. Perhaps we should demonstrate something a bit more active. Just to encourage our friends to reconsider their approach. Before Vextral could respond, the horizon breaker moved. But it didn't move like any ship he'd ever seen. Instead of engaging engines or generating thrust, it simply relocated. One moment it was in the center of the Arcturus attack formation, the next it was behind their fleet, then above it, then seemingly in multiple places at once. Are you quantum tunneling? Nyara asked, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her fear. But the energy requirements for a vessel this size. Nothing so crude, Blackwood replied. We're simply taking advantage of the fact that spacetime is more of a suggestion than a rule. The universe is actually quite flexible if you approach it with the right mindset. The Arcturus fleet had stopped firing, their crystalline vessels vibrating with what Vextral recognized as confusion and fear. On the summit station's main communication channel, voices were raised in a chaos of different languages and translations. What are we witnessing? This violates 17 different laws of physics. The humans have weaponized impossibility. Blackwood's smile took on a hint of mischief. Would you like to see something really interesting, Admiral? We haven't even activated the main drive yet. Main drive? Vextral managed to ask. You mean this isn't your primary propulsion system? Oh no, Blackwood chuckled. This is just the maneuvering system. The main drive, well, it operates on principles that might be a bit difficult to explain in conventional terms. Let's just say it involves teaching quantum uncertainty how to dance. The interior of the horizon breaker began to change. The mathematical patterns flowing through the floor started to spiral upward, forming complex three-dimensional equations that Vextral's most advanced translation software couldn't begin to decipher. The walls became translucent, then transparent, then seemed to fade into something that his eyes insisted wasn't there while his brain screamed that it was. You see, Blackwood continued, as casual as if he were discussing the weather, humanity realized early on that we couldn't compete with the established galactic civilizations in terms of conventional technology. We were centuries, if not millennia, behind. So we chose a different path. Instead of building bigger engines, we learned to whisper to entropy. Rather than developing stronger weapons, we taught causality how to skip rope. The universe, it turns out, has a wonderful sense of humor if you know how to tell the right jokes. Nyara's patterns had shifted to deep purple, a sign of profound intellectual distress among her people. But this changes everything we thought we knew about physics, about technology, about the fundamental nature of reality itself. That's rather the point, Blackwood nodded. Humanity doesn't want to join the existing galactic order. We want to help it evolve. To show you that the impossible is merely the improbable wearing a convincing disguise. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the summit station. Nyara's patterns flashed urgent red once again. Admiral. Long-range sensors are detecting a spatial anomaly. Something massive is approaching through subspace. Blackwood's expression shifted from amused to serious in an instant. Ah, he said quietly. Right on schedule. Admiral, I believe we're about to have some uninvited guests. The kind that tends to shoot first and never really get around to asking questions. The space around the summit station began to twist, reality warping as something began to tear its way into normal space. Vextral felt his exoskeleton trembling as he recognized the energy signature. "The swarm," he whispered. "They're here." "Yes," Blackwood confirmed, his voice now carrying an edge of steel. "And now you're about to see why humanity really came to this summit. The Horizon Breaker isn't just a ship, Admiral. It's a key. And it's time to unlock something that will change the course of galactic history." As the first swarm vessels began to emerge from subspace, their biomechanical forms bristling with weapons that had laid waste to countless civilizations, Blackwood placed his hand against the ship's ever-shifting wall. The mathematical patterns swirling around them suddenly froze, then began to rearrange themselves into something that made Vextral's mind hurt to look at. "Now," Blackwood said softly, "shall we show them what happens when humanity decides to really break the rules?" The swarm emerged from subspace like a nightmare taking physical form. Hundreds of biomechanical ships, each one a twisted fusion of organic matter and dark technology, filled the space around the summit station. Their hulls pulsed with sickly green energy, weapon systems already charging for what they clearly expected to be an easy slaughter. Admiral Vextral had seen swarm attacks before. He had watched helplessly as entire worlds fell to their relentless assault. But he had never been this close to their arrival, had never seen the reality-warping effect of their emergence in such terrible detail. "Fascinating architecture," Blackwood commented, studying the swarm ships with what appeared to be professional interest. Biological components integrated with mechanical systems, using pain as a power source. Effective, if rather unimaginative. Unimaginative? Nyara's patterns flickered with disbelief. "The swarm has destroyed 12 civilizations. Their technology has resisted every attempt at countermeasure." "Yes," Blackwood agreed, "because everyone keeps trying to fight them on their terms. Let's show them something new, shall we?" He turned to Vextral. "Admiral, I'm about to break several laws of physics. I apologize in advance for any existential crises this may cause." The interior of the Horizon Breaker began to change again, but this time it was different. The mathematical patterns weren't just flowing, they were singing. A harmony of pure mathematics filled the air, a song of numbers and probability that made Vextral's translator shut down in protest. "You see," Blackwood explained as he worked, "humanity discovered something interesting about reality. It's not actually a set of rigid laws, it's more like a consensus. And if you can convince enough of reality to agree with your suggestion." He smiled. "Well, watch." The swarm's first attack came as a wave of bioplasma, designed to melt through shields and hulls alike. But as it approached the Horizon Breaker, something impossible happened. The plasma stopped. Not just stopped moving, stopped existing within normal time. It hung in space like a frozen sculpture, beautiful and terrifying in its suspended violence. "Time manipulation?" Vextral asked, his military mind racing to understand the tactical implications. "Not exactly," Blackwood replied. "We're not manipulating time so much as politely suggesting that it try a different direction. The plasma exists in a state of temporal uncertainty, it's simultaneously happening now, never happened at all, and might happen next Tuesday." The swarm ships reacted with visible confusion, their organic components writhing in distress as they encountered something outside their experience. They launched another attack, this time with quantum-tipped missiles designed to tear apart the fabric of space itself. Blackwood actually laughed. "Oh, now that's just playing to our strengths." The missiles never reached their target. Instead, they seemed to fold in on themselves, turning inside out through dimensions that shouldn't exist. When they reappeared, they had been transformed into what appeared to be origami swans, drifting harmlessly through space. "Did you just?" Nyara's patterns shifted to a color Vextral had never seen before. "Did you just convert weapons of mass destruction into paper art?" "Technically, they're not paper," Blackwood corrected. They're still the same quantum weapons, just convinced to express themselves more artistically. We find that even hostile technology can be reasoned with if you approach it with the right attitude. The swarm, clearly unsettled by this unprecedented response, began to coordinate for a massive combined attack. Their ships formed into attack patterns that had spelled doom for countless civilizations. "I think," Blackwood said quietly, "it's time to show them why humanity was invited to the summit in the first place." He placed both hands on the ship's walls, and the mathematical song rose to a crescendo. "Admiral, you might want to update your definition of possible after this." The space around the horizon breaker began to ripple, not with the crude distortions of conventional spacetime manipulation, but with something far more fundamental. Reality itself seemed to be rewriting its own rules in response to the human vessel's presence. "You remember how I said this ship was a key?" Blackwood asked, his voice now carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible for human vocal cords to produce. "Well, what it unlocks is possibility itself." The horizon breaker began to glow, not with any light that Vextral's eyes could properly process, but with potential. Pure, unlimited potential, taking physical form in space. The mathematical patterns that had been flowing through the ship now expanded outward, encompassing the entire battlefield in a web of probability and chance. "In the early days of our space program," Blackwood continued, his words somehow becoming part of the mathematical song, "humanity faced a choice. We could spend centuries trying to catch up to the rest of the galaxy's technological level, or we could try something different. We chose to stop treating physics as a set of limitations and start treating it as a set of suggestions." The swarm launched their attack, every weapon in their vast arsenal firing simultaneously. It should have been enough firepower to destroy a small star system. Instead, it met the web of mathematics surrounding the horizon breaker, and reality shifted. Each weapon discharge was caught in the mathematical web, its energy and purpose extracted and rewritten. Destructive force became constructive potential, death became life, and the very concepts of attack and defense became meaningless in the face of what humanity had achieved. "We didn't develop better weapons," Blackwood explained as the swarm's attack transformed before their eyes. "We developed better questions. We didn't build bigger engines, we rewrote the relationship between distance and time. And now, we're not going to destroy the swarm." The mathematical web contracted, drawing all of the transformed energy into a single point of infinite possibility. Blackwood's smile held both compassion and determination as he delivered the final command. "We're going to teach them how to dream." The point of possibility exploded outward, but it wasn't an explosion of destruction. It was an explosion of change, of transformation, of evolution itself. As it washed over the swarm ships, Vextral watched in awe as the most feared fighting force in the galaxy began to change at the most fundamental level. The biomechanical horrors that had terrorized the galaxy were becoming something else, something new. Their weapons turned to sensors, their pain-driven engines transformed into gardens of impossible light, and their very purpose shifted from destruction to exploration. "You see, Admiral," Blackwood said softly as they watched the transformation unfold, "humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our ability to imagine something better. And now, we're sharing that gift with the galaxy." The former swarm ships hung in space, their forms now beautiful rather than terrible, their purpose transformed from conquest to creation. And in that moment, Vextral understood why humanity had really come to the summit. They hadn't come to join the galactic community. They had come to help it evolve. Silence fell across every communication channel as the transformed swarm ships drifted in their new configuration. Their once threatening forms now resembled abstract art pieces, each one a unique expression of possibility made manifest. The summit station's sensors struggled to classify what they had become. They were neither fully organic nor mechanical, neither weapon nor vessel, but something entirely new. Admiral Vextral found his voice first. "Commander Blackwood, what have you done?" "We gave them a choice," Blackwood replied, his hands still resting on the horizon breaker's walls. For the first time in their existence, we showed them that there were options beyond consume, destroy, and expand. The swarm operated on pure instinct, driven by programming so ancient they had forgotten it wasn't their natural state. He paused, watching as the transformed ships began to move in graceful, coordinated patterns. We simply reminded them that they could choose differently. Nyara's patterns had settled into a deep, contemplative blue. But this level of transformation, it violates every known law of conservation. The energy requirements alone. Energy, Blackwood interrupted gently, is just another form of possibility. And possibility. He gestured at the mathematical patterns still flowing through the ship, is humanity's real currency. Suddenly, the summit station shuddered. Emergency alerts blared across all frequencies as the station's quantum core began to destabilize. The transformation of the swarm had generated ripples in reality itself, and those ripples were now threatening to tear the station apart. Admiral! A panicked voice came through the communication system. The station's containment fields are failing. Core breach imminent. Vextral's military training took over. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. All vessels prepare for. That won't be necessary, Blackwood said calmly. The station isn't breaking down. It's waking up. The horizon breaker's interior shifted again, the mathematical patterns expanding to encompass not just the transformed swarm ships but the entire station. Through the transparent walls, Vextral could see the equations flowing across the station's surface like liquid light. You see, Blackwood continued, his voice taking on that impossible harmonic quality again, the swarm wasn't the only thing trapped in old patterns. This station, like most of the galaxy's technology, was built on principles of control and containment. But there's another way. The station's quantum core, visible through the transparent walls as a pulsing sphere of energy, began to change. The mathematical patterns surrounded it, not fighting its instability but embracing it, guiding it, teaching it new ways to exist. Technology doesn't have to be our servant, Blackwood explained as the transformation continued. It can be our partner. Not through dominance or control, but through cooperation and understanding. The station's alarms fell silent. The quantum core, which moments ago had been on the verge of catastrophic failure, now pulsed with a steady, peaceful rhythm. The mathematical patterns had become part of its operation, turning chaos into harmony. But how? Nyara asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her awe. How did humanity develop this understanding? Blackwood smiled. We learned it from our mistakes. Earth's history is filled with examples of trying to dominate nature, to bend it to our will. It nearly destroyed us more than once. When we finally reached for the stars, we decided to try something different. He waved his hand, and the ship's interior displayed images of Earth's history, wars, environmental disasters, near extinctions. But then it showed something else, restoration, renewal, and finally, transcendence. Instead of trying to conquer space, we learned to listen to it. Instead of building weapons to destroy, we built tools to transform. The Horizon Breaker isn't a ship in the conventional sense, it's a conversation with reality itself. The transformed swarm ships had begun to interact with the station, their new forms resonating with the mathematical patterns in ways that strengthened rather than threatened the structure. The quantum core's energy output had actually increased, but now it was stable, controlled, harmonious. What happens now? Vextral asked, watching as the station's systems began to operate with unprecedented efficiency. Now, Blackwood said, we faced the real test. The swarm wasn't the greatest threat to the galaxy, fear was. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of letting go of control. He turned to face the Admiral directly. Humanity didn't come here just to show you new technology. We came to show you new possibilities. As if in response to his words, the transformed swarm ships began to emit signals, not the threatening broadcasts of their past, but complex harmonies that somehow carried meanings beyond normal communication. They were sharing their transformation, teaching others how to see the universe as they now saw it. The summit station's delegates, who had been watching in stunned silence, began to respond. Some with fear, others with curiosity, but all with the growing realization that everything they thought they knew about the universe had just changed. The question now, Blackwood said softly, is whether the galaxy is ready to learn what the swarm has learned. Whether you're ready to stop trying to control reality and start dancing with it instead. The mathematical patterns continued to spread, carrying with them an invitation to imagine something new, something better. And in the silence that followed, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance, waiting for its inhabitants to make their choice. The next few hours aboard the summit station unfolded like a dream made real. Representatives from every major galactic civilization gathered in the main assembly chamber, their attention fixed on the holographic displays showing the transformed swarm ships dancing through space. The chamber, designed to accommodate hundreds of different species, hummed with conversations in countless languages, all centered on one theme: everything had changed. Commander Blackwood stood calmly at the center of the chamber, the Horizon Breaker's mathematical patterns still flowing subtly around him like a gentle aura. Admiral Vextral noticed how the human's presence had shifted, no longer just a representative of his species, but a symbol of what was possible when imagination overcame fear. What you have witnessed today, Blackwood addressed the assembly, is not just a demonstration of technology. It's an invitation to evolution. Humanity doesn't seek to dominate or lead the galaxy. We seek to unlock it. The Arcturus representative, Zewexlith, whose crystalline form had earlier bristled with hostility, now resonated with harmonics of curiosity. But such power, such fundamental manipulation of reality itself, how can we trust it won't be misused? Blackwood's smile was gentle. The same way you trust gravity not to suddenly reverse, or light to continue traveling in straight lines. What we've discovered isn't a weapon or a tool, it's a conversation with the universe itself. And the universe, he gestured to the transformed swarm ships outside, has much to teach us all. One of the transformed ships approached the station's observation window. Its new form defied conventional description, organic curves flowed into mathematical constants, while what had once been weapon ports now bloomed with gardens of crystalline light. From within its structure came music, not sound in the conventional sense, but pure mathematical harmony made audible. Nyara's patterns shifted to a deep gold of revelation. They're not just transformed, she whispered. They're awakened. Precisely, Blackwood nodded. The swarm wasn't evil, they were sleeping. Dreaming ancient dreams of conquest and consumption because they had never been shown another way to be. Humanity's gift isn't our technology, it's our ability to imagine alternatives. The assembly chamber's quantum processors began to resonate with the mathematical patterns, not fighting them but joining their dance. The station itself was changing, not in the dramatic way the swarm had transformed, but in subtle, fundamental ways. Systems that had once operated in rigid hierarchies began to flow in organic patterns. Energy that had been contained and controlled now moved in natural cycles. Admiral Vextral stepped forward. The Centaurian Empire offers its full support for this new direction, he announced, his translator harmonizing perfectly with the chamber's new rhythms. We have long prided ourselves on our technological advancement, but today we have seen that true progress lies not in domination of natural laws, but in partnership with them. One by one, the other delegates came forward. The Arcturus Confederation, the Rigel Collective, the Sirius Alliance, each adding their voice to a growing chorus of acceptance and wonder. Even those species traditionally resistant to change found themselves drawn to the possibility of something new. But what of the cost? Asked the Pleiadian ambassador, her ethereal form flickering with concern. Such fundamental changes to reality itself, surely there must be consequences. There are always consequences, Blackwood agreed. But consider this, every moment of existence is already a negotiation with reality. Every quantum particle exists in a state of possibility until observed. We haven't changed the rules, We've simply learned to join the conversation that's been happening since the beginning of time. Outside the station, the transformed swarm ships began to move in new patterns, forming structures that existed simultaneously in normal space and somewhere else, somewhere filled with potential. Their harmony spread, touching other ships, other stations, other worlds. Not forcing change, but offering it. This is humanity's true gift to the galaxy, Blackwood continued. Not the technology, not the mathematics, but the reminder that reality is not a prison of fixed laws, but a canvas of infinite possibility. We offer not dominance, but partnership. Not control, but collaboration. The mathematical patterns that had started with the horizon breaker now filled the station, not as an invasion but as an invitation. Species that had been enemies for millennia found their differences dissolving not through compromise, but through transcendence. The very concept of conflict began to seem as outdated as trying to fight gravity. The age of separation is ending, Blackwood announced, his voice carrying the weight of destiny. Not through conquest or submission, but through awakening. The universe is not a battlefield to be won or a resource to be exploited. It's a song waiting to be sung, a dance waiting to be joined. As if in response, the transformed swarm ships began to seed the nearby space with gardens of light, cosmic flowers blooming in the void, each one a testament to the reality that fear and destruction were not the only possible responses to existence. Admiral Vextral watched as his own flagship, docked at the station, began to resonate with the new patterns. Not changing its form dramatically like the swarm, but awakening to new possibilities, new ways of moving through space and time. And so, Blackwood concluded, we stand at a threshold. Not an ending, but a beginning. The galaxy is awakening, not to conquest or control, but to collaboration and creation. The question is no longer what we can take from the universe, but what we can create with it. The assembly chamber erupted in a chorus of agreement, not through shouted voices but through harmonies of light and mathematics and possibility. The transformed swarm ships danced in space, their ancient programming of destruction now rewritten into symphonies of creation. And in that moment, as reality itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, the galaxy took its first steps into a future where the impossible was merely the first draft of a new story waiting to be told. The human experiment had succeeded beyond all expectation. They had not conquered the galaxy, they had awakened it. And in that awakening, all the old dreams of power and dominion faded like shadows at dawn, replaced by something far more precious, the possibility of what could be when fear gave way to wonder, and control surrendered to creation. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for precisely this moment. And now, at last, the dance could truly begin.